Okay, I am entrusted with the gifts of God, lesson 166. I love. Hmm. All things are given you. God's trust in you is limitless. He knows his son. He gives without exception, holding nothing back that can contribute to your happiness. And yet, unless your will is one with his gifts are not received. But what would make you think there is another will than his? Here's the paradox that underlies the making of the world. This world is not the will of God, and so it is not real. Yet those who think it real must still believe there is another will, and one that leads to opposite effects from those that he wills. Impossible indeed, but every mind that looks upon the world and judges it as certain and solid, trustworthy, and truly believes in two creators, or in one, himself alone, but never in one God. The gifts of God are not acceptable to anyone who holds such strange beliefs. Sorry, the celery juice is kicking in. He must believe that to accept God's gifts, however evident they may become, however urgently he may be called to claim them as his own, is to be pressed to treachery himself. He must deny their presence, contradict the truth, and suffer to persevere, to preserve the world he made. Here's the only home he thinks he knows. Here's the only safety he believes that he can find. Without the world he made, is he outcast, homeless and afraid. He does not realize that it is here he is afraid indeed, and homeless too, an outcast wandering so far from home, so long away, he does not realize he has forgotten where he came from, where he goes, and even who he really is. Yet in his loneliness, senseless wanderings, Yet in his lonely, senseless wanderings, God's gifts go with him, all unknown to him. He cannot lose them, but he will not look at what is given him. He wanders on, aware of the futility he sees everywhere, perceiving how his little lot but dwindles as he goes ahead to nowhere. Still he wanders on in misery and poverty, alone though God is with him, and a treasure his so great that everything the world contains is valueless before its magnitude. He seems a sorry figure, weary, worn, in threadbare clothing, and with feet that bleed a little from the rocky road he walks. No one but has identified with him, for everyone who comes here has pursued the path he follows, and has felt defeat and hopelessness as he is feeling them. Yet is his really Yet is he really tragic when you see that he is following the way he chose and need but realize who walks with him and open up his treasures to be free? This is your chosen self, the one you made as a replacement for reality. This is the self you savagely defend against all reason, every evidence, and all the witnesses with proof to show this is not you. You heed them not. You go on your appointed way, with eyes cast down, lest you might catch a glimpse of truth, and be released from self deception and set free. You cower fearfully, lest you should feel Christ's touch upon your shoulder, and perceive his gentle hand directly directing you to look upon your gifts. How could you then proclaim your poverty in exile? How he would make you laugh at this perception of yourself. Where is self pity then? And what becomes of all the tragedy you sought to make for him whom God intended only joy? Only joy. Your ancient fear has come up now, and justice has caught up with you at last. Christ's hand has touched your shoulder, and you feel that you are not alone. You even think the miserable self you thought was you may not be your identity. Perhaps God's word is truer than your own. Perhaps his gifts to you are real. Perhaps he has not wholly been outwitted by your plan to keep his son in deep oblivion and go the way you chose without yourself. God's will does not oppose, it merely is. It is not God you have imprisoned in your plan to lose self. He does not know about a plan so alien to his will. There was a need he did not understand, to which he gave an answer. That is all. And you who have this answer given you have need no more of anything but this. Now do we live, for now we cannot die. The wish for death is answered, and the sight that looked upon it now has been replaced by vision which perceives that you are not what you pretend to be. One walks with you who gently answers all your fears with this one merciful reply: it is not so. He points to all the gifts you have each time the thought of poverty oppresses you, and speaks of his companionship when you perceive yourself as lonely and afraid. Yet he reminds you still of one thing more you had forgotten, for his touch on you has made you like himself. The gifts you have are not for you alone. What he has come to offer you, you must now learn to give. This is the lesson that his giving holds, for he has saved you from the solitude you sought to make in which to hide from God. He has reminded you of all the gifts that God has given you. He speaks as well of what becomes your will when you accept these gifts and recognize they are your own. The gifts are yours, entrusted to your care, to give to all who choose the lonely road you have escaped. They do not understand, they but pursue their wishes. It is you who teach them now, for you have learned of Christ. For you have learned of Christ, there is another way for them to walk. Teach them by showing them the happiness that comes to those who feel the touch of Christ and recognize God's gifts. Let sorrow not tempt you to be unfaithful to your trust. Your sighs will now betray the hopes of those who look to you for their release. Your tears are theirs. If you are sick, you but withhold their healing. What you fear but teaches them their fears are justified. Your hand becomes the giver of Christ's touch. Your change of mind becomes the proof that who accepts God's gifts can never suffer anything. You are entrusted the world's release from pain. Betray it not. Become the living proof of what Christ's touch can offer everyone. God has entrusted all his gifts to you. Be witness in your happiness to how transformed the mind becomes, which chooses to accept his gifts and feel the touch of Christ. Such is your mission now, for God entrusts the giving of his gifts to all who have received them. He has shared his joy with you, and now you go to share it with the world. Lesson 166. I am entrusted with the gifts of God. Greetings, beloveds. Beloveds, this lesson is asking you to step into your role as the messenger of God, as the bearer of the gifts of God, to see through the illusion and to see with the eyes of God that come from the mind of God, to think with the mind of God, and to love with the heart of God. You are being asked to step into your own Christhood. You're being asked to be a representation of the truth and of the light. You are being asked to release yourself from all of the places where you have chosen to invest in an illusion, to invest in a reality that says God does not exist, for there is misery and pain and suffering, or for those who believe that God has created these as a punishment. None of this is true, beloveds. What is true, and is true always, is that you yourself are a Christed being, that you yourself are embodied with the love, the tenderness, the compassion, and the kindness, and the will of God. Do you understand that you yourself know how to walk this path? We have spent lessons upon lessons pointing you in the direction. The question is now, beloveds, Do you choose to walk this path with God? Or do you choose to allow the ego to continue to be in charge? The choice is indeed yours, beloved ones. But when you allow yourself to be the messenger of God, when you allow yourself to say, I am responsible for all, each being that I create, I will extend love to them. I will be generous with my heart. I will love the power and the majesty. You are that representative. Each of us are. When one remembers, one reminds another, and then another, and then another. And then you find that the path that you walk upon, beloveds, is filled with beings who have remembered that God dwells in them and they are as God created them. For that is the truth of all beings. Be that one, beloved. Be that one that allows themselves to know the truth of life and the truth of love and the truth of their beingness. And the truth of you, beloved ones, is that God exists where you are, as you are. And you have a choice at every moment to choose to follow the will of the ego or to choose to follow the will of God. And when you allow yourself to remember who you truly are, when you allow yourself the absolute pleasure of bringing Christ into your heart, when you allow yourself to know the truth of you, you cannot help but to know the truth of all beings. As you see and know the truth of yourself, you then become that beacon. You then become that light. You then become the way shower for others, for they say, what is it in the quality of this being? What is it in the quality of this personage? The kindness that they show, the words that they speak come from love. They care for the heart of another. They care for the mind of another and the soul of another. For when this occurs, beloved ones, there is peace, peace that exists, and Christ enters, and Christ presences itself, and you see the divinity through your eyes reflected in the eyes of another, and you are truly walking in alignment with the path. The gifts that you have that are granted from God are gifts that are meant to be shared with one another, gifts that are meant to be bestowed upon another. When you look upon another with love, you interact with them with compassion, with kindness. When you look within the eyes of another and you see the reflection of Christ within them, you are bestowing a gift upon them, a gift that you can give by looking within and seeing that same Christed beingness. And when you recognize it within yourself, you cannot help but want to share that with others. And in that sharing, beloveds, all are reconciled back to the truth and the love and the light that God is. So allow yourself to share the gifts of God broadly today. Allow yourself to share the love that burns so brightly within you. Allow yourself to be generous with your gifts, gifts that were bestowed upon all. And when you find a being who has forgotten who they are, love them, embrace them with your heart. Speak words of kindness to them and forgive them for the moments when they have forgotten. And of course, always forgive yourself, beloveds, for the moments when you have forgotten your own purity and your own divinity. And allow yourself to remember this is a choice that free will grants to you. Choose to remember in each and every moment and in each and every circumstance that God is indeed with you. Turn to your fears and say, you are but illusions. For the truth of the gift of God is that I see the truth. And in the truth, I see the light and the love of a Christed being that stands for me and that is within me. Go with our blessings, beloveds, now and always, and know that Christ dwells in each of us as each of us. And allow yourself to be that one who lights the path for those to follow, and say, come and join me, beloveds. Come and join me, brother and sister. For when we recognize the truth within ourselves, we gladly share that with another. All blessings to you, beloved ones. We'll speak with you again. Thank you, everybody. See you again tomorrow.